Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hopefully you're all enjoying business CTF talks so far, and good luck in the CTF that's taking place in the very near future. My talk, I'm sebh24, defensive content lead here at the Box, and what I'll be talking through is an exclusive piece of content within the enterprise platform, a Sherlock called Carson, which is a first of its kind for us. And it's a walkthrough, talk-through of what we call a hardening Sherlock. What does that mean? Essentially, that means that we're going beyond just the analysis, and we're actually putting in place an element of a patch of some description to try and remedy a vulnerability that is in place on the host that we are actually investigating. So without further ado, let's jump straight into the enterprise platform. So you can see what you have here. Anyone who's not played Sherlock, it's very similar to, I guess, what you could say from a question format of guided mode, except this isn't guided. We're asking questions. They are essentially the flags as part of this. In every Sherlock, as I've just explained in previous talks, you have a scenario. In this specific Sherlock, we have an IP address, but there's also Sherlocks where they are downloadables. And we are given the credentials to the Sherlock, so unlike a machine, we don't have to compromise that host. Instead, we're given credentials of a default account to access the actual compromised host here. As per any Sherlock, the first thing I would always do is read and digest the scenario. So you can see here, as a digital forensic investigator, we receive a distress call from a client who operates a website using the Web Butler software suite. Once again, that's something I would take note of immediately. So I've got my remarkable in front of me, and that is something that I will note down. So Web Butler, as I believe that is probably something quite important. Once again, the client reports they're unable to log into the web interface to make modifications to their website. So there's obviously an access issue here, potentially not serving customers as required. They're concerned about a potential security breach. They seek our expertise to investigate the issue and restore access to their system. Okay, so once again, we can see here immediately what we need to do now is actually SSH onto the host itself from our host. In this scenario today, I'm using Pwnbox, which is available to anyone in the enterprise platform, and I believe also the community. Pwnbox essentially enables us to use our browser to potentially access the host. Essentially, it's just a parrot VM that's forked with a set of tools that can be utilized in CTFs, Sherlocks, or even machines. So we will copy our IP address here, and we will just SSH using the default account onto the host itself with the password hacktheblue. Okay, we can see we're now onto the host. We are the default account. I'll just double check to make sure I can escalate to the sudo account, as I imagine we'll likely need to. There we go, okay, perfect. The first thing I'll do, as well as that, is just also browse to the website and see what's running on the actual port. So you can see Web Butler is running on port 80 as expected. I guess the question we have right now is what? Is it Nginx? Is it Apache that's running that? We can actually check that by looking at our process list. So once again, we see it's Apache 2. What that means is we'll likely have a set of logs within the var log, and we can see Apache 2.logs. Now I expect these are our access logs in here, and it's likely if we run cat access log and then we pipe that into a tail -n1, what we can see here is obviously some recent access logs that have occurred. So once again, this looks like a Web Butler sort of software suite in terms of looking at the access logs. What we'll also confirm is just the potential installation location, which would usually be var www. And we can see within that we have HTML. We'll double check in there. There's nothing in there. So let's check the public directory. Okay, brilliant. And in the public directory, we can see a variety of directories that exist here. I expect if we cat index.php and pipe that into a more, we'll get a similar output to what we saw earlier. There we go. So we see Web Butler, once again, version 3.2, so we can make a note of that. 3.2, copyright 2008, 2016. So this looks like quite an out-of-date version of Web Butler from the off. Okay, brilliant. So now we've done a little bit of sort of poking around, trying to get an understanding of the artifacts we are looking at, which I expect to be access logs for the most part. And then we'll have a look at, I guess, the question sets that we're provided with. And the question sets are, what is the name of the web shell deployed? Okay. What encoding did the attacker use to obfuscate the web shell? What time did the attacker upload the web shell? What is the user agent of the attacker? What is the IP address of the attacker? What you'll notice is the questions are really formed around the sort of W's of what, where, when, essentially. And then there's additionally how. How did it happen is what we really want to know. And finally, please patch and harden the host and enter the flag here. So there's a patching element of this. And then we can see the attacker changed password for the web app. What did they change the password to? Okay, so I tend to not directly try and answer the questions and first try and pick up some breadcrumbs on the actual host itself. So the first thing I would like to do is just browse to our var log directory again, cd into Apache, and begin to look at the access logs. There's a few ways we can do this. One way would essentially be to pipe this into a more and just hit the space bar and try and read this. But as you can see, that would potentially take some time. What I would rather do in this scenario here is actually essentially sort each URI that was browsed to across the board by unique, and just have a look at the addresses that are being utilized here. So we can cut, and then we can use, we'll start off with potentially our delimiter of the inverted commas, speech marks, and then we'll go, so that's dash, so cut -D, and then we'll go -F, and I think that should be 3. No, okay, let's try 4. No, that's 5. Okay, let's try 4. Okay, there we go. So we can see all the URLs that are being browsed to in here. And then I imagine, as per a lot of access logs, there are often, like I said, URLs that are browsed to time and time again. So we'll actually just sort this by unique URIs. Okay, and brilliant. So if we scroll down from the top, we can see we've got a much smaller list to look at now, which is always positive. And immediately what we can see here, for example, is a file within content media file updated.php, which looks like a standard upload location. And we can see a question mark here and CMD. So this looks like this is indicative here of sort of what you'd expect from web shell activity. We can see a command output there, so cat etc passwd. Another actual thing we could have used, instead of using cut to look at the URIs, we could have grepped for CMD, and that would indicate also any potential web shell activity. But we'll have a look at our initial output again. Okay, so we can see immediately we've got the updater.php file. We can see they've cat the etc passwd. We can see once again they've executed what looks like potentially a find command there. They've ran a process listing here. We can see they've ran who am I to confirm what privileges are running on the host. And they've edited what looks like a variety of potentially files here. So we can see the base config.php, so that's something we can come back to again. So we can make a note of that. Base config.php. We can see what else have we got here, and that is within var www public settings. We can see ls. Yeah, so we've got a few things to go from there, and we'll make a note of that directory as well. So we can make a note of var www public settings. It's got a notepad in it. It's not something I use very regularly. I use my own VM. But I assume it likely does. Okay, so I found Pluma, which is our notepad. We'll use it as a notepad and sort of note taking as part of this. So let's make a note of var www public and settings, var www public and content, it looks like there. And then make a note of the file base config.php, as we believe it looks like it's potentially been a web shell used by a threat actor that's accessed that. And we'll also, whilst we're here, make a note of the content media file location, so var, so content media media and file, and then updater.php. What we'll do just immediately is have a look at our updater.php file. So let's browse into var www and then public again. And then we can go to content, media, file, and have a look within there. We can see there's an update.php file. So let's just cat that update.php file. And we can see here it looks like what is essentially a large base64 encoded string. So it's like that this is some type of web shell. What we can do, if we really want to, is actually copy and paste it out into sebh24 to decode it. We see it's fairly hefty in size, but we'll sort of persist with this. There we go. Okay, brilliant. So let's copy and paste it out. We can open up sebh24. And we can just drop that into here to have a look at what that is. Okay, we can see there's not much pulled from that, but that's okay. We can head back in, and what we can tell immediately is that base64 encoding was utilised, and we actually can answer a question from within that. So let's go back into our enterprise platform, and we can confirm that base64 encoding was used to obfuscate that web shell. Now, there's no question going into the actual deobfuscation of that web shell, and I likely don't have the time to delve into that today with the time of the talk that we have. And if I do have time at the end, we can look at that. Okay, brilliant. It asks also what is the user agent of the attacker and what's the IP address. I believe these are things that we can additionally likely confirm from that. If we just cat our access log file again. grep, and then we can grep for updater.php. Okay, so we see 3.1.252.12.173, and I'd quite like to know when this was first actually seen within the access logs. So we can see here 14th of February 2024, 14th Feb 2024 at 12:17:44 UTC. Okay, so you see we're making a note of things that are of interest to us as it stands. And once again, we'll double check to see if this IP address is the correct IP address in the actual platform, and see if we got that question correct. Okay, brilliant. So we now know the IP address of the attacker, and we can come back into this, and we can also confirm the user agent utilized by the attacker here. And the reason this is a question we ask is that the attacker may use a user agent that's unique. We'd like to know the IP address, and it's highly likely that within a wider SOC environment, you might actually perform some type of hunt for that specific user agent string across a variety of assets if it is fairly unique to the attacker. You can also compare it to user agent strings that you see regularly from, for example, internal hosts within your organization. So once again, that's the reason we ask questions that are sort of broached around that topic. Okay, now let's double check to make sure our user agent string is correct, and that seems to be wrong unusually, so that's an incorrect answer, but let's double check that again. Okay, yes, as it stands, that is wrong. I'm currently unsure why, but what we'll delve into now is I'd like to investigate how this web shell actually arrived on the host itself. What I'm going to look for now is any indicator of potential upload activity. There's a variety of ways we can do this. Often when people have an upload feature on a website, there's often either an upload.php or a sort of upload function that they have that you can see within the URIs. So what I'll actually do is just grep for the word upload and see if we can find anything that would indicate that. So we can see here there's an upload feature within the admin browser index.php. So that uploads a new file, type, file, and actual folder. So we can see here from the same attacker's IP address, which we've obviously detailed here, that the attacker has actually uploaded a web shell called c99.php at 12:17. So I guess let's compare that time So let's actually make a note of that within our actual log itself. So once again, we got 12-February, no, 14th-February-2024, 12/17/32, and that does fall within a similar time period of our actual initial traffic itself. You can see that the file name is c99.php. Okay, let's just grep for any potential additional access logs that detail c99.php, and we can see that is the only one as it stands. So this looks like another web shell that was potentially uploaded by the attacker at some point. Potentially they renamed the actual web shell whilst they've had access to the host. As there is only one file within here, so if we do ls-alh. Okay, perfect. And what we can actually see for file update.php, and then if you do stats update.php, we can see this was actually modified at 12/17/41 prior to it being accessed. Okay, brilliant. So once again, this fits in within the sort of time period that we have here, and what we can now detail is that our initial web shell that was likely deployed by the attacker was called C99 in fact. So that is good news for us, and we can confirm that now. Interestingly, I believe it looks like Web Butler likely defaults the upload of files to content media file. So we can see that here now, which makes a lot of sense. Okay, what I'd like to do now is just delve into how we'd actually potentially harden this. Had this been a real life incident, what we'd like to do is take a note of the MD5 sum of update.php. We could potentially look at that within VirusTotal to see if it's been indicated elsewhere. Okay, we're going to search for that actual hash. And we can see that it does come up as malicious and as a file named update.php. We can see, yeah, a live web shell. We can delve into this in a bit more detail if we have the time. What we can confirm is it is certainly malicious and should be removed from the host. So we'll actually remove that from this directory. And now what we're going to do is essentially try and prevent this from occurring again. The way that I will do this, and there's numerous ways you can do this, is I'm going to place a .ht access file on the actual host. And essentially the reason for that is this ht access file can instruct the Apache server itself to deny access to all files with a specific extension. So what we're going to do is just nano.ht access, and we're going to hit files, and then we can do all files with a PHP extension, and then we can deny from all, and then we can close that with our stanza here. So we'll see what this details is. It essentially opens up the config with the files. We detail that anything with a PHP extension, so a wildcard here, so any file with .php, we should deny from all locations. And then we close that with this block here. So if we control that, and now if we go back to our EP platform and scroll down, we can see it says please patch and harden the host and enter the flag here. And it tells us we can cat dev verify to obtain the host flag. So at this stage, we've removed the uploaded web shell. We've added the .ht access, and we'll confirm that it does exist there. And now what we're going to do is cat dev verify. Okay, brilliant. And what we can see here is that we've actually managed to retrieve the flag from this host. So we go back to our EP platform now and just enter our flag there. So we can see we're actually a fair way through now. And what we can also confirm from earlier is the time the attacker uploaded the web shell in UTC. And it looks like here the time is 12/17/32 on the 14th of February. So we go 14/02/2024 12/17/32, and that is actually correct. And we can also confirm the potential user agent that the attacker utilized, which should exist here. And we'll copy and paste that out. And that is also correct. So at this stage, we only have one more question left over to essentially try and figure out at this point. And I would see we've been kicked off the host because we answered and retrieved the flag. That's okay, we can just SSH back into this actual asset. And we can start to look at essentially what is the password that was changed by the attacker. Now remember earlier we detailed in our notes that the base config.php was actually edited. That sounds like probably a nice location for a password to exist. So what we'll actually do is navigate into our public setting directory. We'll have a look in there, and we can look in base config.php, and we scroll, we can see a password that exists here. Now that password looks like an MD5 sum of some description. Now within Web Butler, if we look at within our global vars.php, what we can actually locate within here is that the password itself is broken down into, so it's the salt key, so it's actually a salted password. So we have salt key 1 dot the relevant password, and then salt key 2, and it's an MD5 sum of that here. So we see here that we have salt key 1 and 2. So what we're actually going to do now is sort of try and run this a little bit blind and bring down a list of the top 100 passwords that may have been utilized, and utilize that within CyberChef itself. Okay, so let's open up CyberChef. We can potentially try and script this in Bash as well, but essentially it's having an element of brute forcing here, pretty much. So if we remove this from earlier, the first thing we'll have to do is essentially bring in a password list for us to utilize. And we can definitely do that. So what we can do is have our password list as an input. So we can see here that's our password list. And we then use the fork to add, so split each line. So we can see that exists here. Okay, so we're now going to use the find and replace function, and we'll detail this for start of line. And what we can do is, you see here, we've take our first salt key and replace the start of the line for our first key here. So this will add, as you can see here, on every single line, salt key, we've got our password, and then we have our our password list, and then we'll add another find and replace and place that at the end. So that is our dollar within regex, and detail our second salt key here. So we can now see that what we essentially have is this. And now what we can do is basically place that all within, take an MD5 sum of all of that. And if we go back to our terminal, that's our wrong one, and we just copy it and paste that, and we go back in and potentially do a Control F, we can find actually our password is here, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines down. So it's likely that our password is in fact password. So the threat actor did not set a secure password for that. And with that, we're able to confirm the last question as part of our Sherlock. Please, I recommend you play through this Sherlock. It's the first of its kind within hardening, and we'll be hoping to bring more out over the coming year. So thank you very much for your time. I think I finished this a minute early, which is unusual for myself, and I hope you all have a very good business CTF. Thank you.